Go.
Myself, Sarah, and fellow group members Ashlee, Hannah and Naomi have identified lone parents as a group in Australian society as being at high risk of poverty. For clarification in this presentation, as the ACOS Poverty Report 2011 explains, poverty will be referred to as a relative concept used to describe the people in a society that cannot afford the essentials that others take for granted. To measure poverty, we use what is called poverty lines. As the ACOS Poverty Report 2013 explains, the poverty line refers to 50% of median household incomes, so half of the middle income for all households. Another poverty line commonly used is a 60% median income. The lower of these poverty lines, which is used by governments and expert bodies such as OECD, demonstrates a very poor standard of living for those living under the poverty lines. When an individual or group experiences poverty, they are susceptible to various disadvantages, such as lower rates of education, lowered access to healthcare, lack of adequate housing and nutrition, lack of dental care, and high rates of social exclusion, just to name a few. It is therefore important to reduce the risk of lone parents falling into relative or absolute poverty, so that they can gain access to essentials that lead them to a good life, not only for themselves, but to provide for their children with the resources and skills to contribute to a society as adults and break the poverty cycle. As this cycle demonstrates, it is not uncommon for children to become trapped in poverty as a result of their parents being trapped in the poverty cycle. A lone parent's income directly impacts the life chances their child has. A child's earliest years fundamentally shape their life chances. Gaps in capabilities between children from socio-economically disadvantaged families and their more advantaged peers appear early in life. Starting school behind the 8 ball can begin a cycle of disadvantage that sets a trajectory for poorer outcomes later in life. Some people can actively move in and out of poverty relatively quickly, while others remain in the cycle. As McLaughlin, Gilfin and Gordon explain, the longer individuals and groups live under the poverty line, the less likely they are to escape poverty, and also increases the likelihood of falling into poverty later in life if they do in fact escape the poverty cycle. So how do we know lone parents are a group at risk of poverty in Australian society? As this graph demonstrates, 25% of lone parents and their children live below the 50% poverty line. As the 2013 ACOS Poverty Report explains, this is due to a number of factors, such as low levels of employment among lone parents, particularly for those caring for young children on their own, and the social security payments available for these families. This will be discussed further later in the presentation. This next graph shows that single people with or without children face a higher risk of poverty than couples. The 2013 ACOS Poverty Report also emphasises that the rate of poverty is likely to have increased since the gathering of this data and as a consequence of changes to the income support for lone parents was introduced on the 1st of January 2013. This therefore puts more lone parents at risk of poverty in society. Now that a description of lone parents and their risk to relative poverty and absolute poverty has been established, Ashlee will now explain the impacts and experiences of poverty. Hannah will then identify 2 contrasting explanations of poverty for lone parents, and Naomi will conclude by identifying and describing a social security payment implemented to address poverty for lone parents and how this payment impacts on their poverty levels.
Hi, I'm Ashlee, and today I'm going to be discussing the impacts and experiences of poverty on lone parents. Why poverty exists and why it falls on certain groups and not others is a very difficult issue to comprehend. Lambert suggests that it has been argued continuously that poverty results in most common cases from a lack of economic resources and activities. The economic for welfare payments can be made at both a microeconomic and macroeconomic level. Lone parents are one of the fastest growing demographic groups in the population. It is the high incidence reports of poverty that make lone parents a major concern for social policy. Lone parents have a huge reliance upon welfare welfare support services, which hinders the possibility of them achieving economic self-reliance and having a higher living standard for the future. Despite this, for majority of lone parents, welfare support services are needed to maintain daily living standards. Reliance upon welfare support for any period of time prevents the possibility of them achieving economic self-reliance and a higher standard of living in the future. The children of lone parents face similar economic difficulties as poverty throughout childhood and their schooling years places them at a competitive disadvantage relative to children from families consuming double incomes. Lone parents face numerous amounts of experiences and impacts of inequality and poverty. The causes of this can come from a number of different reasons and be due to a number of factors and deeply affect their lives and opportunities. With only having one income coming in to support the family can be quite difficult and can lead to high levels of inequality and poverty. Keeping on top of bills, food, rent, everyday living costs can be difficult for the best of people without even adding in the extra cost of children. Employment opportunities for lone parents are very limited and difficult to find, especially for those whose children are not at school. The extreme cost of childcare prevents lone parents from entering the workforce and any other type of training or studying, as in some cases they don't have any other support from family or friends. When their children reach school, the stress of paying bills and being able to live an everyday life takes over, and lone parents want to grab any type of job they can. For some this may be fine, but for others who want to take their education further, they really have no choice. This impacts their opportunities in life as they are unable to reach their full potential and dreams. Children of lone parents also impact on levels of inequality and poverty for this group. Childcare, preschool and school all have significant costs that can be hard for the best of people. As well as these costs, there are also extra costs including uniforms, stationery, books, food, school camps and other special activities that go along with being at school. After-school activities like sport or music that all children want to be a part of are also expensive, and majority of lone parents could not afford this for their number of children. This creates disadvantages for these children as they are missing out on what majority of other children get to do, creating them to feel different. Although it doesn't seem like much, when you add all the little things up it can make a significant difference. These situations also affect the lone parents, as like any parents they want to be able to give their child the best opportunities for life. This creates feelings of guilt and causes lone parents to blame themselves. It affects their life as they can either decide whether to put food on the table or let their child play basketball. It lowers their self-esteem and prevents them from reaching a sense of well-being or happiness of life. Lone parents' life opportunities are deeply decreased due to their situation of living. They go through so many experiences and have strong impacts that affect their everyday life, opportunities to succeed, and in most cases leave them in poverty.
Hi, I'm Hannah, and today I'm going to identify two explanations of poverty in terms of sole parents. These include the individual explanation and the structural explanation. As well as this, I'll be also drawing on different ideologies in terms of sole parents.
For the purpose of this presentation, I'll be drawing on the structural and individual explanations of poverty in terms of sole parents. According to Jordan 2004, the structural explanations of poverty look at the structural causes of poverty, including inequalities in the social, economic and political structures and processes. These inequalities create an imbalanced allocation of resources to individuals in society. There are various ideologies represented within the structural explanations of poverty. According to Hayward 2007, ideologies refer to the various ideas about society that make up one's view of the world. These assumptions, observation and interpretations create a set of ideals which make up a good society. For the purpose of this presentation, I will be drawing on neoliberalism and socialism in terms of structural explanation of poverty for sole parents. In terms of the structural explanation of poverty, neoliberalism implies that poverty within sole parents is caused through social and political reasons. This can be evidenced for sole parents through the welfare systems in Australia, which may put them at a disadvantage and cause inequality. According to MacArthur, Thompson and Winwork 2013, changes that have occurred within the Australian welfare system towards a workforce model have put financial strain on single parents to be able to afford childcare whilst having to work, therefore inhibiting their incomes because of the caring responsibilities of their children. Furthermore, sole parents' households were 5 times more likely compared to other families to experience hardships, most evidently witnessed within those who receive social security payments. Another ideology within the structural explanation of poverty is socialism. Socialism emphasises the impact of one's community on the reason for poverty within sole parents. It suggests that one's social interactions and memberships within the society in which they live can impact on one's level of inequality and social disadvantage. According to MacArthur, Thompson and Winworth 2013, Australian sole parents' social context can create disengagement, alienation and poor access to the formal and informal supports that most families take for granted, therefore leading to the risk of increased poverty. In comparison to structuralism, individualism is another explanation of poverty. According to Bradshaw 2006, the individual explanation of poverty argues that an individual is accountable for their level of poverty and inequality. It highlights an individual's choices and actions in which put them at greater risk of entering into poverty. For sole parents, this may be caused as a result of getting into a dysfunctional relationship, having children with multiple partners, as well as habits such as smoking and drinking, which put financial pressure upon their lives. There are particular ideologies that are represented within the individual explanation of poverty. These include conservatism, which involves permissiveness and human imperfection. The ideology of conservatism emerged in the late 18th century, which came about as a result of economic and political change. According to Hayward 2007, values within conservatism include human imperfection and permissiveness. Human imperfection is the conservative view of poverty in which sees individuals' imperfections as the root of their cause of inequality rather than as a result of society. Permissiveness has to do with people's ability to make their own choices, in which produce particular outcomes. In terms of the individualism explanation of poverty for lone parents, this outlines that sole parents' choices are the reasons for their poverty.
Hi, I'm Naomi, and I'm discussing one social security payment relevant for this group and an argument about the extent to which this benefit reduces and alleviates poverty. Which payment? The parenting payment by Centrelink. What is its main purpose? This payment is for single lone parents. The main purpose of this payment is to support single and lone parents in covering the financial costs associated with raising children. How does it change the poverty of your group? The parenting payment is for single lone parents with children under the age of 8 years and gives up to $713.20 per fortnight to the individual. Does it prevent poverty? No. According to the Australian Council of Social Service, ACOS, it is acknowledged that the single lone parent families on the parenting payment are at a much higher risk of poverty and face hardship than many other groups within the community. An average jobless single lone parent spends half of its income on rent or home repayments, power and other household bills and food. Does it reduce poverty? No, it doesn't reduce poverty. As I said in my last answer, single lone parents are at a higher risk of poverty and financial hardship. The parenting payment stops once the child turns 8. That means around 84,000 Australians, poorest families, are having their benefits cut by as much as $110 a fortnight. Also, Australia still has the 5th highest poverty rate for sole parents. Therefore, the reduction of poverty hasn't been significantly changed by the parenting payment. This payment only provides monetary support without further support necessary to break the cycle of poverty.